a prince who outwitted his own blood, a battlefield where destiny was written in blood and steel, a father imprisoned by his own son, forced to gaze upon the monument of his lost love. This is not just a story of power. It is a tale of deception, betrayal, and ambition unlike anything the Mughal Empire had ever seen. In the year 1657, the mighty Emperor Shah Jahan, the visionary behind the Taj Mahal, lay weak and bedridden. The empire, once thriving under his rule, now faced an uncertain future. And in the shadows, four royal brothers prepared to fight for the greatest prize in the world, the Peacock Throne. One was a philosopher, loved by his father but despised by the orthodox. One was a rebel, raising armies in the east. One was a warrior, ruthless but reckless. And one was Aurangzeb, patient, calculating, merciless. In this war of succession there would be no mercy, no second chances, only one victor. And he would stop at nothing to seize the throne. But at what cost? This is the untold story of Aurangzeb's brutal rise to power. The year is 1657, and the empire that once seemed unshakable is now standing on the edge of chaos. The mighty Mughal emperor, Shah Jahan, lies on his deathbed, or so the rumors whisper. His body is frail, his breath labored. The empire waits, but not in mourning. The throne of the Mughals is not passed down like a simple inheritance. It must be taken. And waiting in the wings are four ambitious sons, each with an army at their back and treachery in their hearts. Dara Shikoh, the philosopher prince, favored by his father but despised by the powerful clergy. Shuja, the governor of Bengal, impatient and reckless, ready to stake his claim. Murad, a fierce warrior but a man who trusts too easily. And then Aurangzeb, a man of patience, a man of silence, a man who plays the long game. Blood ties will mean nothing in the days to come. Swords will be drawn. Oaths will be broken. A family will be shattered. The empire is in peril, and the battle for the Peacock Throne is about to begin. In war, swords may claim victory, but deception decides the fate of empires, and Aurangzeb was a master of deception. As the Mughal Empire stood on the brink of civil war, the four royal brothers prepared for battle. But Aurangzeb knew something his brothers did not. This war would not be won by strength alone. It would be won in the shadows. Aurangzeb. His first move, betrayal disguised as loyalty. The fate of an empire would be decided in a single day. The year is 1658, and on the battlefield of Samugar, the earth would be soaked in the blood of brothers. Dara Shikoh, the emperor's favored son, stood at the head of his mighty army. His golden armor gleamed, his war elephant towered over the battlefield like a beast of legend. He was the rightful heir. The empire was his by birth, by destiny. But across the field stood Aurangzeb. Dressed in cold steel, his banners carried no golden splendor, only the dark emblem of war. His men were not fighting for honor. They were fighting to win, and Aurangzeb had no intention of losing. The battle began with the thunder of cannons, the whistle of arrows, the deafening clash of swords. Dara, confident and fearless, charged forward, his war elephant leading the attack. But confidence is not strategy. And in war, one mistake can seal your fate. Aurangzeb waited. He watched, and when the moment came, he struck with ruthless precision. A trap was sprung. His archers rained arrows upon Dara's forces, his cavalry circled like wolves, cutting off their escape. The Golden Prince was surrounded, his army collapsing in chaos. Dara fled, his once loyal generals abandoning him one by one. The prince who had been born to rule was now a fugitive, running for his life. And as the sun set over Samugar, only one brother stood victorious. Aurangzeb. The war was not yet over, but the tide had turned. The throne of the Mughal Empire was within his grasp, and he would let nothing stand in his way. He reached out to his younger brother Murad, whispering words of alliance. He promised him a kingdom, a throne of his own, and Murad, the warrior, trusted him. Together they would march against Dara Shikoh, the emperor's favored son. But in Aurangzeb's mind, Murad was not a brother. He was a pawn, a stepping stone to power. Meanwhile, Aurangzeb's spies spread false rumors, whispers of Shah Jahan's recovery, of Dara's growing strength, of treachery within the empire. Confusion turned into paranoia, and as his brothers hesitated, Aurangzeb struck first. The battlefield was being prepared, the players were being moved, and soon the first blade would be drawn. But in this deadly game of deception, no one was safe, not even Aurangzeb's own blood. Victory had been won at Samugar, but for Aurangzeb, one battle was never enough. There was still one obstacle standing between him and absolute power. His own brother, Murad. Murad had fought beside Aurangzeb, believing their bond was forged in war, in blood. He saw himself as an equal, a ruler, a king who would share the empire. But Aurangzeb saw him as something else, a liability, a pawn to be discarded. And so the stage was set. On a warm summer night, Aurangzeb invited Murad to a grand banquet, a celebration of their triumph. The finest wines flowed freely, laughter filled the air, and Murad, drunk with victory and intoxicated by trust, let his guard down. Then, in the dead of night, the laughter stopped. Sound of goblets clinking, then silence. Murad's vision blurred. His limbs grew heavy. The wine, once sweet, now tasted bitter. Before he could react, soldiers stormed into the tent. Steel flashed. Shackles clamped around his wrists. "Brother, what is this?" Murad's voice was slurred, confused. He looked to Aurangzeb, searching for an answer. A sign of mercy, a lie to soothe the betrayal. But Aurangzeb simply watched. His face was calm, his eyes empty. The trap had been set long before the feast began. Murad, the mighty warrior, was dragged through the dirt like a common prisoner. His fate was sealed. Aurangzeb's betrayal was complete. His brother was no longer a threat, only another ghost in the path to the throne. And now only one enemy remained, Dara Shikoh. Dara Shikoh was once a prince, a scholar, an heir to the most powerful empire in the world. But now, he was nothing more than a fugitive, a hunted man, a ghost running from the inevitable. After his crushing defeat at Samugar, Dara fled, clinging to the last remnants of hope. He rode through scorching deserts, dense jungles, and treacherous mountains, searching for allies, searching for safety. But one by one, doors shut in his face. Loyalty crumbled like sand slipping through his fingers. The nobles who once bowed before him now whispered behind his back. The warriors who once swore to die for him vanished into the night. And behind him, like a shadow that never tired, came Aurangzeb's hunters. They tracked his every move, their eyes cold, their orders clear. Dara must not escape. One fateful night, Dara found shelter in Sindh, under the protection of Malik Jiwan, a man he once saved from execution. Surely a debt of life would be repaid in kind. But debts meant nothing in the face of fear. Betrayed. Dara awoke to the steel grip of chains around his wrists. The man he had once saved had sold him for survival. Dragged through the streets of Delhi, Dara Shikoh, the crown prince of the Mughal Empire, was paraded like a criminal. His once golden robes were now rags, his once noble face smeared with the dust of his downfall. The people wept, but none dared to help. The prince who had been meant to rule was now a prisoner. Aurangzeb had won. But victory was not enough. Aurangzeb needed Dara to vanish forever, and there was only one way to ensure that. A blade, a cold night, a silent execution. And just like that, the last great threat to Aurangzeb's throne was no more. The empire was his, the throne was his. Every rival had been eliminated, but Aurangzeb was not finished yet. There was still one final piece to be removed from the board. The very man who had once ruled as the supreme power of India, his own father, Shah Jahan. Once, Shah Jahan was the mightiest emperor in the world, a ruler whose hands shaped an empire, whose love created a wonder of the world. But now those hands trembled with age, his body weakened by sickness, and as his strength faded, so too did his grip on power. Aurangzeb's soldiers arrived at the imperial palace without fanfare, without mercy. No armies clashed, no swords were drawn. Only a simple command was given. The emperor is no longer free. The doors of the Red Fort slammed shut behind him. His empire continued, but without him. For 8 long years, Shah Jahan remained imprisoned within these walls, and yet he was given a single luxury, a window. From his cell in the octagonal tower, the once great emperor could do nothing but gaze across the Yamuna River, where his beloved Taj Mahal stood, his final gift to his lost queen, Mumtaz Mahal. He had built it as a symbol of eternal love. Now it was his only companion. He watched the seasons change. He watched his empire, his life's work, slip from his hands. But most of all, he watched his son's betrayal unfold. He had raised Aurangzeb. He had groomed him to be a prince. But in the end, he had created a ruler of ice and iron, a son who had cast his own father into the shadows. And so, in 1666, in the silent halls of his prison, Shah Jahan breathed his last. No royal processions, no grand farewells. His body was carried in the dead of night, placed in the tomb he had built for his queen. The emperor, who had once ruled the world, was buried in silence. Aurangzeb had taken the empire, but in doing so, he had become the very thing he once feared, a ruler who stood alone. The empire had been won, but at what price? The rivers of India had run red with blood. Brother had turned against brother. The whispers of betrayal had drowned out the echoes of loyalty. And now, in the year 1659, one man stood victorious. Aurangzeb, the last son standing. But as he walked toward the throne, did he feel triumph? Or did he hear the ghosts of those he had slain? Sound of slow footsteps on marble, the rustle of royal robes. His father, Shah Jahan, had built an empire of grandeur, of art, of poetry. But Aurangzeb, he built his empire on the ashes of his own kin. As he entered the Diwan-i-Am, the hall of public audience, the court fell silent. All eyes were upon him, some with fear, some with awe, and others with quiet resentment. The peacock throne, studded with diamonds and rubies, stood before him, once a seat of splendor, now a symbol of ruthless conquest. Sound of a crown being placed, heavy silence. And then the moment arrived. The crown of the Mughal Empire was placed upon his head, the weight of gold, the weight of history, the weight of every life taken in his name. The court erupted in a chorus of voices, Zil-e-Ilahi, shadow of God on earth. But did Aurangzeb believe it? Did he believe that his path, paved with deception, betrayal, and blood, had truly been the will of God? Or did he know, deep in his heart, that the real battle had only just begun? He had won. He had outlasted them all, his father, his brothers, his enemies. For 49 years, Aurangzeb ruled as the most powerful emperor of his time. He expanded the Mughal Empire to its greatest territorial reach. But what had it cost him? Sound of wind whistling through an open palace window, distant cries of rebellion. The throne he had bathed in blood now felt colder than ice. His empire, once the jewel of the world, was crumbling at its edges. The very people he ruled had begun to turn against him. His wars, once a symbol of dominance, had drained the treasury, bled the land, and shattered the unity of the empire. The power he had sacrificed everything for was slipping through his fingers like sand. Sound of pages turning, the slow, tired sigh of an aging ruler. He had no time for art, no love for music, no patience for poetry. He had crushed all joy beneath his iron rule. And now, as he neared the end of his reign, Aurangzeb wrote a letter, one that revealed the torment of a man who had everything, yet nothing. I came alone and I go as a stranger. I do not know who I am, nor what I have done. My soul is lost in a maze of grief. For all his victories, for all his conquests, this was the truth he could not escape. He had won an empire, but lost his soul. Aurangzeb, the last great Mughal emperor, would die in 1707, leaving behind an empire teetering on the brink of collapse. The dynasty he fought so hard to rule would not last another century, and history would remember him not just as a mighty conqueror, but as the man who, in securing his own power, had doomed the empire he sought to protect. He fought, he conquered, and he ruled. But in the end, what did it all mean? Aurangzeb had buried his father, slaughtered his brothers, and silenced his enemies. He had built an empire that stretched farther than any before him, yet it would not survive him. The mighty Mughal dynasty, once unshakable, was now a crumbling monument to his ambition. The man who had spent his life seizing the world left it with nothing but regret. His own words, written in his final days, whisper through time, "I have sinned terribly, and I do not know what will happen to me. I am alone, and I do not know who I am. Power gained through blood can never last, and the throne Aurangzeb once fought so mercilessly for would soon belong to no one." History remembers those who build, but never forgets those who destroy. Like, share, and subscribe for more forgotten tales of history